Once upon a time, in a charming little village surrounded by rolling green hills and a river that sparkled under the sun, there lived a girl named Emily. She was 20, with eyes as blue as the clearest sky and hair like spun gold that shimmered in the sunlight. Every morning she would walk through the village, her gentle smile lighting up even the gloomiest faces. People often said Emily's beauty was captivating, but it was her kindness that truly made her shine. She lived in a small, humble cottage with her family. Though they were poor, they shared a bond that was rich in love, laughter, and warmth. Emily's heart was full of dreams, each one larger than the little village she called home. She loved to read, and every time she turned the pages of a book, she felt like she was being swept away to magical lands where anything was possible. Often she would sit by her window at night, staring at the stars, imagining what her life could be if she ever found a way to escape the village and live her dreams. One day, while strolling through the bustling village market, Emily felt a strange flutter in her chest. The market was alive with chatter, the aroma of freshly baked bread, and the vibrant colours of fruits and flowers. But amidst all the noise and chaos, her gaze landed on someone who stood out like a lone star in the night sky. It was a young man, tall and strikingly handsome, with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hide 1,000 stories. He was watching her, and when their eyes met, it felt as if time itself paused. His name was John, and he came from a family that was not just wealthy but powerful. They owned vast lands and a magnificent mansion at the far end of the village. Unlike others from rich families, John's gaze was not proud or arrogant. Instead, it was warm and curious, almost as if he saw something in Emily that no one else had ever noticed. Gathering his courage, John approached her. "Hello, I'm John," he said, his voice deep yet gentle. "I see you here often. May I have the honor of walking with you?" Emily's heart raced. No one had ever spoken to her like that. She hesitated, then nodded shyly. "I'm Emily. It's nice to meet you, John." That day they walked through the market, talking and laughing as if they had known each other forever. John was fascinated by Emily's bright spirit and the way she spoke passionately about the world beyond the village. Emily, in turn, was enchanted by his kindness and genuine interest in her thoughts. From then on, John and Emily were inseparable. Every evening they would meet by the old oak tree near the river bank. They would sit under its sprawling branches, listening to the gentle murmur of the river, sharing stories, and dreaming of a future filled with love and happiness. It wasn't long before their friendship blossomed into something deeper, something neither of them had expected but couldn't deny. One evening, as the sky turned shades of pink and gold, John took Emily's hand. His touch was warm, and his eyes shone with a tenderness that made her heart flutter. "Emily," he whispered, his voice trembling, "I love you. I've loved you from the moment I saw you. Will you marry me and make me the happiest man in the world?" Emily's eyes widened with shock and joy. Tears welled up as she looked at him, realizing that her own feelings mirrored his. "Yes, John," she breathed, her voice filled with emotion. "I love you too. I would be honored to marry you." But their happiness was fleeting, like a fragile bubble in a storm. When John announced his intention to marry Emily to his family, he was met with cold stares and harsh words. His mother's face turned pale with disbelief. "John, you cannot marry a girl like her," she snapped. "She is poor, and we are one of the most respected families in the region. What will people say?" John's father, a stern man who valued status and wealth above all, nodded in agreement. "You will not marry Emily. It's out of the question. You must find a bride who is equal to you in status, someone who can strengthen our family's position." John's heart ached as he argued with his parents, his voice rising in desperation. "But Emily is not just any girl. She is kind, intelligent, and full of dreams. I don't care about her lack of wealth. I care about the goodness in her heart." But his parents refused to listen. They threatened to cut him off, to disown him if he went through with the marriage. "If you marry that girl," his father said coldly, "you will lose everything. We will not support you, and you will no longer be a part of this family." John was torn. He loved Emily more than life itself, but he had never imagined his family would turn their backs on him so completely. When Emily found out, she was devastated. She couldn't bear to see John lose everything he had ever known. One night, she met him under the oak tree, tears streaming down her face. "John," she whispered, her voice breaking, Maybe we shouldn't be together. I love you, but I can't stand the thought of you losing your family and everything you've worked for. You deserve a better life, one that I can't give you." John's heart shattered at her words. "No, Emily," he pleaded, taking her hands in his. "You are my better life. Without you, nothing else matters." But Emily shook her head, pulling away from him. "Your parents will never accept me, John, and I can't bear to see you suffer like this. I think it's best if we say goodbye." They held each other, crying softly under the moonlit sky. Their love was strong, but the world seemed determined to tear them apart. With a final, heartbreaking kiss, Emily turned and walked away, leaving John standing alone, his heart broken into pieces. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Emily tried to move on, throwing herself into her work and helping her family. But every night she would dream of John's face, his touch, and the love they had shared. John, too, was miserable. Though he continued working with his family, his heart was no longer in it. He felt empty without Emily, his days stretching out in a dull, grey haze. Then, one terrible day, Emily's father fell gravely ill. The family had no money for medicine, and Emily feared that he would not survive. Desperate and afraid, she stayed by his bedside, praying for a miracle. When John heard about Emily's plight, he didn't hesitate. He rushed to her home, his heart pounding with worry. "Emily," he said softly, "please let me help. I can't stand to see you suffer like this." Emily looked up at him, her face pale and drawn. "But, John, I don't want you to get in trouble with your family again. They'll never approve." John shook his head fiercely. "I don't care. I can't watch you go through this alone." He brought medicine, food, and even doctors to care for Emily's father. Day by day, Emily's father grew stronger. Emily watched in awe and gratitude as John stood by her side, supporting her through the darkest days. "You've saved my family, John," she whispered one evening, tears glistening in her eyes. "I don't know how to thank you." John smiled gently, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You don't need to thank me, Emily. I'm here because I love you. I always will." And in that moment, Emily knew that no matter what, she couldn't let John go again. They had faced so much pain, so many obstacles, but their love had endured. And now, standing there in the dim light of the room, they realized that nothing, no family disapproval, no lack of wealth, could keep them apart. "John," she whispered, her voice trembling, "if you're willing to fight for us, then so am I. I love you, and I want to be with you, no matter what." With a smile that lit up the entire room, John took her hands and said, "Then marry me, Emily. This time, for real. We'll make our own family, our own happiness. We don't need anyone else's approval." And so they married quietly, in a small ceremony surrounded by friends who truly cared for them. Though John's parents refused to attend, it didn't matter. John and Emily were finally together, and that was all that counted. They moved to the city and built a life from scratch. It wasn't easy. They struggled and faced many challenges, but their love gave them strength. Together, they created a home filled with warmth and joy, welcoming children who grew up learning the true meaning of love and perseverance. Years later, as they sat together, watching the sunset from their little home, Emily turned to John and smiled softly. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Choosing me over everything?" John looked at her, his eyes full of love. "Never," he said. "Choosing you was the best decision I ever made." And so they lived the rest of their days in happiness, their love proving that when two hearts are truly meant for each other, no force in the world can keep them apart. The end. Like, subscribe and share if you believe in the power of love.